Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Sustaining Sustainability. I'm your host, CB Bhattacharya, Professor and Director of the Center for Sustainable Business at the University of Pittsburgh. This week, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined from London, United Kingdom, by Peter Lacy, Chief Responsibility Officer and Global Sustainability Services Lead at Accenture. Accenture is a global professional services company with experience across more than 40 industries, including internal and external activities in responsible business and sustainability. Mr. Lacy will discuss new partnerships to measure sustainability performance and supporting innovation in the circular economy sector. Peter, welcome to the show.
Great to catch up, CB. And it's good to be with all of your listeners. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are.
So Accenture is probably familiar to many of our listeners as a professional services company, but could you begin by telling us a bit about Accenture's services in the area of sustainability in particular?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So, well, thank you first of all, CB, for the invitation. And all of your incredible work around the world. Now, so Accenture is the largest integrated technology and consulting service provider in the world, all with one goal, which is to apply human ingenuity and technology to help our clients solve their biggest business problems. If you step back from the quarterly earnings reviews and the annual performance schedules are that we need to make capitalism sustainable and fairer, and a model that delivers for the many, not the few, economic development, jobs, prosperity, growth, positive growth. Secondly, we need to realize the value of the fourth industrial revolution in ways that truly change people's lives for the better, and where we see that uptick in terms of human outcomes. And thirdly, we need to deliver the Paris Declaration and the Sustainable Development Goals. So our own performance as a business, on the one hand, that's one area I look after, everything internally for Accenture, which is unusual to blend that role, but also then with developing our sustainability services. But our sustainability services start from that premise, applying human ingenuity and technology to the biggest problems in sustainability. So that might be the transition to a low carbon, zero carbon, or even regenerative economy. It might be the circular economy. It might be helping to build trust, transparency, and traceability, and to avoid or to reduce or even eliminate things like child labor and abuses of human rights in supply chains. So it comes from those perspectives. I mean, I'll stop there. I can go more deeply into some of the more specifics, but that's the set of principles and the overarching, if you like, philosophy of what we're trying to do with sustainability services.
In January, Accenture announced an expanded partnership with Salesforce. Could you describe this expanded partnership and tell us a bit more about the motivation behind it?
Yeah, I absolutely can. And I want to set it in the context more generally of an ecosystem of partners that we're developing around sustainability performance measurement and sustainability communication, as well as reporting, and also, more importantly, the attempt to support our clients in revolutionizing management information available to them on environmental, social, and governance issues. So you're right, we announced Salesforce and that partnership. If you go back even a year before that, we announced SDG ambition with SAP. And we recently, even last week, took a minority stake investment in Arabesque, one of the world's leading data and analytics providers of ESG data to capital markets. So you can see that really what's happening is we believe that we are at the foothills of rewiring the global economy at the macro level, the global level, at national level. You know, governments and world leaders are now being measured against SDGs and their commitments to the Paris goals as much as they are being measured against GDP. That is now filtering into the capital markets, where boards are being expected to explain increasingly with things like TCFD their sustainability performance. That will only go in one direction. Recently, you saw the World Economic Forum, for example, its ESG metrics initiative identify 21 different metrics that 160 of their International Business Council are expected to sign up to. I think there are about 70 or so now, and run by the big four accounting firms. And then what we need to do to underpin that is sustainability must become an integral part of the ERP systems, the cloud-based systems that companies use to measure and provide the tools and the dashboards at every level of the organization. So that's what the Salesforce Sustainability Cloud Partnership is about. It's about Accenture working with Salesforce to help to re-equip, retool the organization from the CEO dashboard on sustainability performance right down to the individual, maybe in procurement, making decisions previously on cost and quality and availability that now needs the data to be able to make choices that are consistent with the sustainability goals, objectives, or even regulatory and disclosure areas that have been committed to by organizations. So really it's about rewiring the global economy and retooling organizations. Now, what we believe is that now needs to come from the margins and the disruptors to the mainstream. And that's why you hear the names like Salesforce, like SAP, like Microsoft, and others you will hear as we move through our journey as the biggest integrator of all of those around the world.
So it certainly sounds like this expanded partnership, or this ecosystem that you're creating, will help support, science-based targets for greenhouse gas reductions, to combat climate change and other social ills that we have right now. Could you speak a little bit to the collaboration with Microsoft, which you mentioned, and Avanade to help reduce UK's net emissions to zero? How did that come about?
Sustainability and the race to zero, and to go beyond zero, I hope over time, to a regenerative economy, restorative economy. It requires collaboration across multiple different sectors. So if you think about decarbonizing electricity, for example, which in this case is the partnership between Microsoft and Scottish and Southern, you need to rethink generation. So you need to shift from fossil fuel based centralized power to often decentralized renewables on the supply side. You also need to have storage technologies because of intermittency. You need to electrify grids that are enabling electric vehicles. You also need to be looking at demand side energy management and energy efficiency, often in large volumes of consumers and customers across different commercial and residential settings. Now, that also then is all enabled by a grid that needs to be much smarter, much more data rich, much more intelligent to make better decisions. And so that's where you get partners like Microsoft bringing the very latest in big data analytics, artificial intelligence, predictive tools with a utility like Scottish and Southern Energy, SSE, and then collaborating with the regulator, in this case the UK, and then with Accenture doing what it does well, which is our strategy and consulting business, our integration business, being able to pull that all together in industry relevant ways. So, that's really what's happening here. Now, what's also interesting in that partnership is that while that is the core of the partnership as it stands, the Microsoft Accenture utility partnership, as I mentioned there, you can imagine in the future it's starting to build clusters, and to solve the problem you have to break down industry silos and barriers. So the automotive industry, even oil and gas, and even retailers who have electric charging stations or large facilities that can double up as battery and storage, and smart use of the grid, it actually becomes a very collaborative ecosystem play that requires a lot of different partners from a lot of different industries, all trying to solve problems with human ingenuity and technology. So that's the genesis of the partnership. We're very excited about it. Microsoft are very excited about it. It's limited for now to the UK, but watch this space.
We certainly shall. On a related note, circular economy is a phrase that is at the center of many discussions these days. So, could you tell us a bit about some of the initiatives that you're leading at Accenture to promote innovation in the area of circular economy?
Absolutely. And at Accenture, what we're trying to do is to think about how we look at end-to-end value chains, and even across different global value chains. The real opportunity is to think differently about business models. That's the human ingenuity point I mentioned. So products as a service, the idea of extended life cycles, the idea of switching out unsustainable supply chains for sustainable supply chains, sharing platforms, these kinds of shifts in business models, and to look at what enabling technologies allow you to do that in an economically viable way, and hopefully a way that increases competitiveness as well as the value to customers. So at Accenture, what we're trying to do is work with our clients to innovate their business models, to pick the right technologies, to apply those to their supply chains, to apply those to their operations, but also to apply that to product design. So to integrate that into the marketing teams, the R&D teams that are at the genesis, at the beginning of the process of designing products and thinking about that from the beginning of that journey. And so look, I think that's what we're doing. We are working with some great partners. Very excited just a month ago to launch the world's first circular accelerator program, where we got from 200 down to 17 companies that we will work with: SAP, Accenture, Ecolab, Dell, Nike, and others, to help them deploy those new business models and technologies at scale, and to bring disruption into the mainstream. And I think that's really important, to keep that dialogue going between different stakeholders. Academia, I think, can help with whether it's social sciences with those models, whether or not it's the physical sciences and the engineering schools with those technologies, and whether it's the entrepreneurs who are applying those. We need a village. I mean, that's an understatement. We need a city. We need we need a conurbation of innovation to really allow for collaboration to have the kind of scale and speed of impact that's needed in areas like circular economy.
That's so good to hear. So the next question would be kind of, how do you communicate the business value of investing or innovating in the circular economy space to your corporate clients?
It's a really interesting debate. So we don't have any problem. I'm going to be transparent. We just don't have any problem with our clients increasingly at the level of business case for sustainability. Now, you've got to remember, though, that we're talking here. Accenture's clients are predominantly, well, they're almost all in the top 2,000 corporations in the world. Like, we would serve 90% of the Fortune 500 case. What we now have to make is a much more sophisticated business case. Our clients aren't asking for, look, does this stack up? Does this make sense, from a business perspective? They're asking, what helps actually increase our competitive positioning, right? If the whole industry is heading in this direction, which we think it is over 3 to 5 years, where's our advantage in this? So where is the intersection between sustainability, revenue growth, cost reduction, risk management, brand and intangible asset value, or innovation of new products, new markets, new services? So I would just say it's become a lot more sophisticated. The one other piece I would add is that our fastest growing sector for clients in sustainability in the last 6 months, and the most board conversations I'm having, are with financial services clients, who I think have been, in some cases, there's always been pockets of absolute excellence and real expertise. But en masse in the mainstream, I think it's been more about negative or positive screening, rather than the more sophisticated understanding of the link to value creation and future value, and where growth themes are going to emerge with the kinds of markets, product, services that tackle the bigger SDG problems. or where regulation is headed. That I think is as a sign also, I think that the capital markets and banks are waking up in ways that we've seen maybe for a longer time in other industries.
Peter, what is the most important message you want to convey to companies at this time?
I think the most important message is that we've gone beyond the why and even in some cases the what, and it's about the how, right? So if I go back to your conversation and your question to me about Salesforce and SAP and Microsoft and our ecosystem, that's a good example for me about how we know why we need to measure it because we need to get the world on a clear pathway towards the SDGs and the Paris Summit conclusions. We know what that takes in terms of pathways and what business contributions are needed. So now it's about the how. Well, the how is about retooling organizations to be able to measure their sustainability ledger, if you like, in the same way as their financial ledger. And so I think companies who are still wrestling with why and what are probably missing the point and need to speed up and need to get to the how and how you apply human ingenuity and technology to solve the how problems, I think is the next era and the next phase of leading edge companies turning sustainability to advantage.
That's terrific. And finally, what call to action would you make to our other listeners, the regular folks out there?
Making sure that in all of the different roles that we play, I think sometimes we say we sort of divide people's identities artificially. Well, look, I'm a businessman, you're an academic, you're an NGO, you're a policymaker. Look, we're all in this together, right? And we are all on a decade-long journey to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals. That isn't the end, by the way. That is just a milestone that we've created, but it is an absolute imperative that we deliver those. So there are many different vantage points from which people can help to marshal, to put pressure on where it's needed, to help with the why, the what, and the how of the business contribution to the SDGs and to the race to zero. And so I would just encourage people to focus on their specialisms, focus on where they can develop a real base of expertise. I think the days of general sustainability are perhaps gone. And I think now it's about really precision, answering precision questions and using expertise and experience to help accelerate and to help scale that business contribution to the SDGs.
Peter Lacy, thank you so much for spending your precious time with us today. And this is your host, CB Bhattacharya, signing off, and we look forward to seeing you next time for another edition of Sustaining Sustainability.